This video shows how to control data that's entered into cells using drop-down lists in Excel. So in this instance, I've created just a really small amount of data that has a couple different things that people can type in. And what controlling cells is really helpful if you have multiple people who are entering the data in, or if you're sending this out to people and you want them to fill it out. If you can manage what options they have to choose from, you're going to be able to control the data and have it be more uniform, and that makes the data more valuable. So if I just let people fill in what their satisfaction is, I'm going to get all kinds of different responses to that. Sometimes if you put even a state field, you might have people that type 2 letters. They might be capital or lowercase or the full name or slang. And anyway, basically the idea behind this is to be able to manage the format of the data so that if you try to run reports and things, the data is more valuable. So the way to do this, I already created, for efficiency's sake, a new tab. So what you want to do is, outside of where you're actually typing in the data, you want to create a new tab. So here I've created what's called list info, and you want to give it a name basically that makes sense to what you're doing, right? So list info is like, this is the list, the information that's going to be in the list that I'm going to put over here, because that's how we're going to do it. We're going to preset the data, and then we're going to create a drop-down list over here. So I'm going to say list info. So here's the options I'm going to give them for their satisfaction with the order process. It's very simple. This is a quick, easy example. So now that I have these typed out, what I want to do, and you can set these to be anything you want, and they can be anywhere they want, anywhere you want them to be. If you'll notice, I put this in column D because it relates to this column here. That's where I'm putting it. You don't have to do that, but if you're wondering why I left this gap, that's why. In my mind, that made logical sense. If you want to put your first list here, or you put it over here, wherever makes sense to you is also fine, because you're going to select the data. So then you go back to your original tab, and you're going to highlight the cells where you want this to be the option. And so I'm going to say each tab, I'm only going to allow 50 responses, okay? So I'm going to select those. Then you're going to want to go up to the Data tab, and on the Data tab, you're going to want to select Data Validation. So you can select this drop down here if you hit the arrow and do Data Validation, or you can just click at the top and it'll give you the same answer. So then on the Data Validation box, you want to be on the Settings tab in case it's not already. And then from the validation criteria, you want to allow a list. This is how we're going to create a list. Then click in the source box. And from here, this is going to feel really odd to you, but you're actually going to click on the tab where you've entered that preset data. So I'm going to click on List Info, and you'll notice it'll automatically fill this in for us. If we wanted to type this out, we could. It's not that complex, but it's also easier to just click. And then from there, I'm going to left click to highlight, and I'm holding the left click, and I'm dragging down to select all the possible answers. And the one thing I will say is it is important to put these in the order you want them to appear in the dropdown, because however you list them here is exactly how the order that they will show up in that dropdown. So now that this formula has fully been created, and I want it to be an in-cell dropdown, and that's fine, I'm just going to say OK. And it's going to take me back over here, and now you'll notice I have this dropdown next to every single one of these cells. So if I click the dropdown, here's my answers. And so now whenever somebody goes to this cell, they have this dropdown. And if they try to type anything, they're going to get an error. So it's going to say this value doesn't match the data validation restrictions defined for this cell. So you can retry. And then in that case, I would click this, get rid of that content, and then I can select from here. So these are basically available all the way down that I've selected them, and that's how that works. So if I scroll all the way down to 50, you'll still see that. Once I go to the next box, it's not there because I've only defined it for that area. So you can control as much or as little of any column as you want. And if I did freeze pane here, freeze top row, you can see so you can tell I'm still in the same cells. Once I get past 50, there no longer is that drop-down list. So you can set that for as far or as little as you want. So if you only had a small little set of rows that you wanted to put this into, you can. You can basically define it anywhere. The one optional thing I will also show you is if you don't want anyone to be able to mess with this data, and it could be completely accidentally, they might just be wondering what it is, you can hide this sheet. So if you right-click on it and then you click hide, now it's gone. To get that back, you have to click on an available sheet. So if I right click over here, nothing happens. I'm right clicking, you can't tell it, but I am, and there's nothing happening. If I right click on this, I can say unhide, and it's going to bring up any hidden sheets that exist. Just simply click on the name of the one you want to get back. Click OK, and now it's back. So it's a simple thing that someone else could do, but they'd have to go to the effort to do it. So if you were trying to make it to where somebody doesn't accidentally mess with that data, that's an easy way to hide the data and keep them from, changing something where you might end up with drop down lists in several places, right? You might, if you're just working on a small demographic area, you could have the zip codes to make it easy for people to make sure they didn't typo the number. Like I said, the states, there's several other things that you could have them use drop downs, anything where it's a yes or a no, or you looking for a specific response type so that you format that data sort of uniformly. So that is how you can control data entered into a cell in Excel using drop down lists.